Alright, so let's talk about heaven and hell. Now, typically when people talk about this particular topic, they come at it from a kind of reward and punishment type of perspective, right? If you follow God, you'll be rewarded with heaven. If you reject God, then you'll be punished with hell. And I mean, although that's not an entirely incorrect way to look at it, I don't think it's the best way to look at it. I mean, if you come at it from the perspective of, reward and punishment, then you kind of create this kind of Christianity that's based not upon actually loving God and wanting to live for Him, but more just kind of I don't want to go to hell, so I might as well follow God type of mentality. And I feel like a lot of Christians, myself included, for a long time, and probably still do, have that mentality of, I just don't want to go to hell, so I might as well follow this thing, But, I mean, think of it this way. It's kind of like if someone were to propose to their girlfriend and be like, hey honey, I love you so much, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, will you marry me? P.S. If you say no, I will punish you and torture you for every living moment of your life. So, please say yes. I love you. No, even the person does say yes, it's not going to be out of love or faithfulness or commitment to that individual or whatever. It's going to be more likely than not based on fear of saying no and the potential of them being tortured for them saying no. And so, coming at this from an entirely fear-based perspective, I believe, is not the best way to go about this whole topic. Now, I will say there's nothing necessarily wrong with fear. I think that fear is kind of important to an extent. You think about when you're a kid, you feared your parents, right? You didn't do certain things because you knew that if you got caught, you'd probably get in trouble by your parents, and you didn't want that to happen, right? So the thing that kind of kept you in line most of the time was that fear of your parents and what they might, do, the punishment that you might receive if you got caught doing something wrong, or whatever the case may be. So I think that obviously fear is, essential to an extent, but at some point, as the relationship progresses, you kind of grow out of that fear and into more of a respect and love, right? Going back to, the parents, at some point, as you grow older, as you mature, you don't necessarily fear your parents, but you love them and respect them. And the reason why you listen to what they have to say and obey them is not out of fear anymore, but out of love and respect for them, right? And so at some point during that growth and throughout that relationship, that fear that used to be the motivation behind why you did certain things, why you didn't do certain things, evolves into a mutual love and respect that is more the motivation behind why you do certain things, don't do certain things. And so I feel like even within Christianity and our relationship with God, right, sure, we might start off with a fear of God, but at some point that fear has to evolve and mature into a respect and a love for God. And I feel like for a lot of us, we're still kind of stuck in that fear state, and we haven't really moved past into the maturing in love state when it comes to this issue of heaven and hell, because a lot of us are still kind of motivated by that issue of, I don't want to go to hell, so I'm not going to do certain things. Instead of having the perspective of, because I love God, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that. And so I'm going to try to present this whole message of heaven and hell from the loving, more relational perspective. So I feel like that is the better reason to desire to be with God and desire to be, in a relationship with Him, and to desire to be a Christian at all, So this is pretty straightforward, if you love God, if you desire to be with God, then God will grant you, that privilege of being with Him for eternity, right? If you're loving God and living for God here on earth, then of course you'll have a grand old time doing that for eternity in heaven, right? But if you don't love God, and you don't like Him, or you don't want to live for Him, you don't want to follow Him, then God's not going to take you up to heaven with Him to live with Him when you don't even like Him here on earth. You know what I mean? And so when you think about who goes to heaven and who's going to hell, those who love God and desire to live for Him will live for Him for eternity. And those who don't want to be with God will, well, not be with God. That's essentially what heaven and hell is, right? Heaven will be full of those who actually love God and desire to be with Him. And hell will simply be those who desire to be separated from God. They don't want to be with God at all. Because for someone who doesn't want to be with God, to be stuck in heaven, that would pretty much be like hell for them, right? It's kind of like, if you try to imagine like the best place in the world, right? Your favorite place in the world, right? It can be real, fiction, or whatever. Just imagine what would make the best place in the world for you. Now, I also want you to imagine probably your least favorite person in the world. I don't want to say hate, but just your least favorite person in the world. And now imagine having to spend the rest of your life, eternity, with the person that you don't really like, the least favorite person in the world, even though you're at the best place, your favorite place in the world, right? And you couldn't really escape that other person. Slowly but surely, that place, no matter how great it may be, is going to begin to become, like hell because of this person that you're stuck with, right? And that's the same thing that would happen with those who really don't want to be with God and don't want to be in heaven. That might get stuck in there anyway, right? And so the separation, the distinction between heaven and hell is less of a punishment type deal and more of just a God giving us what we want, right? If we want to be with God, then we will be with God. If we don't want to be with God, then we won't be stuck with God. We'll be separated from Him. So at the end of the day, it's all about relationship, really. And those who go to heaven, those who go to hell, no matter which side you're on, it is an act of love, right? Because God loves certain people, because God loves us, He's going to allow certain people to be with Him for eternity because they actually want to be. And He'll allow those who don't want to be with Him to actually be separated from Him for eternity. And so at the end of the day, heaven and hell, no matter where you go, it is an act of love. It is an act of God's giving you your free will to choose where you want to be and who you want to be with. If you want to be with God, you will be. If you don't, then you won't be. It's really very simple. So at the end of the day, who's going to be in heaven? Those who desire to be with God, those who desire to live for Him, those who desire to have eternity spent with the one who they long to be with. And who will not be in heaven? Well, those who don't want to be, those who chose to reject God and deny Him and to not live for Him. Okay? So, and of course people always ask the question, well, what if someone never heard of God before? What about those people? And they have all these edge cases. But I'm confident the same God who, literally laid His life down just so that He can save us is the same one who's also judging us and, determining who will be saved and who will not be saved. So I'm sure that He'll work all those kinks out. And those who, again, who will desire to be with Him will be with Him. And those who don't, won't. And that's the most loving thing you can do. Not forcing someone to be with you when they don't want to be with you, but allowing them to make that decision for themselves. So anyway, my camera battery's about to die. I can see the red light flashing, so I'm going to end this video. But as always, think on these things.